Pyro is an exceptionally strong mutant, and today we're going to tell you why. To say the least, Pyro's mutant strength is astonishing. He has the capacity to manipulate whatever fire he sees and make it as deadly as he can. St. John Allardyce, or often known as Pyro, has absolutely nothing to lose in his second life.
Allow me.
He is at ease with his abilities and his place within the world, and he has no fear of anything, including death. Anyone who has nothing to fear is a threat to their rivals, especially if they can create monsters out of fire on a whim. Pyro's abilities, along with his wits, make him a lethal wild card in just about any confrontation. In this video, we'll take a closer look at Pyro's powers, history, and role in the X-Men universe. Get ready to learn more about this fiery mutant and what makes him one of the most compelling characters in the X-Men series. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Pyro, aka St. John Allardyce origins. His origins in the Marvel Comics. Pyro is the moniker of the fictional character who features in Marvel Comics' American comic books. Pyro has been a frequent rival of the X-Men, who ultimately becomes a government spy. He was conceived by John Byrne and Chris Claremont. First, he appeared as a member of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants in the Uncanny X-Men issue number 141 in January of 1981. Pyro possesses the mutant ability to manipulate fire. The Brotherhood of Evil Mutants and Pyro are the primary antagonists in the X-Men storyline Days of Future Past, attempting to assassinate Senator Robert Kelly, which leads to a dystopic future in which mutants are persecuted, killed, or captured by Sentinel robots. The assassination attempt is foiled, and the Brotherhood eventually become agents of the US federal government in return for a complete pardon, and the squad is dubbed as the Freedom Force. We will be exploring this exciting story arc a little further in the video. Pyro then appeared in the Marauders comic in October 2019 as part of the Dawn of X initiative with Bishop, Emma Frost, Iceman, Kitty Pryde, and Storm. His early life and powers. St. John Allardyce was born and brought up in Sydney, Australia. Like a few other X-Men such as Black Lynxus and Ice Mana, he's been involved in multiple altercations with the X-Men. Although Pyro's mutant ability enables him to manipulate fire, he cannot create a fire out of thin air. As a result, Pyro's outfit always includes a fuel tank and a flamethrower, when previously he merely used lighters or matches. He can control the flames and create complex fire sculptures in response to his commands. Pyro could also boost the fire's intensity to the point of melting bullets before they could reach him. His ability to manage flame appeared in his adolescence, but he wasn't able to put it to use. Pyro met the mutant Mystique after years of working as a writer and novelist in Southeast Asia, and she subsequently recruited him into the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants as a remorseless criminal and rebel. Pyro, marvelous story arc. His criminal activities in the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. He attempted to murder Senator Robert Kelly with the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, but was defeated by the X-Men beforehand. He subsequently fought the Avengers and the X-Men with the Brotherhood. Pyro worked with the Brotherhood under the direction of many of Magneto's associates, who alternately managed the team, but never served under the team's true commander, Magneto. His life as a federal agent in the Freedom Force. Mystique's Brotherhood then rebranded itself as Freedom Force after offering the team's talents to the US government in return for their safety and a formal pardon for its crimes. Magneto was abducted as one of the team's first assignments. He then captured the Avengers for the federal government with the Freedom Force. Later, when attempting to apprehend Rusty Collins, he battled with the original X-Factor. He battled the X-Men with Freedom Force in Dallas and saw their apparent destruction. He battled Cyclops and Marvel Girl with Freedom Force, attempted to capture Rusty Collins again, fought the New Mutants, and eventually arrested both Skids and Rusty. Under Spiral's orders, he and Blob tried to kidnap a young mutant girl called Amanda, but were thwarted by Daredevil. In the Acts of Vengeance, he joined forces with Blob and Avalanche to take on the Avengers. During the team's final assignment, they faced a gang of Iraqi agents branded as Desert Sword while in Kuwait. On both sides, people died. Pyro decapitated Super Saber and killed the sword operative known as the Veil. Ultimately, the Freedom Force is beaten, and Pyro and Blob are deserted and detained in Kuwait. Pyro and Blob are compelled to work as bodyguards for the military chiefs of the country. Toad later secures their release. Pyro and Blob join Toad's newfound Brotherhood of Evil Mutants and fought alongside them against the X-Force. the legacy virus infection, and his death. Pyro later got infected with the legacy virus, a lethal sickness that primarily affects mutants. He made tremendous efforts to search for a cure, even seeing Cecilia Reyes, and often at a price of other lives. Still, he was ultimately unsuccessful and perished to the virus. This was shortly after Pyro had saved Senator Robert Kelly, whom he had previously attempted to murder, from a resurgent Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. This heroic gesture also influenced Senator Kelly's overall perception of mutants, leading to his resolve to strive toward peaceful coexistence between mutants and humans. His ultimate resurrection and the events that followed. Pyro is revived by the transmode virus despite his valiant death to join Selene's legion of deceased mutants. He joins the attack on the mutant country of Utopia under the command of Eli Bard and Selene. Pyro was revealed to have survived the happenings of Necrotia when he faced both the actual adult Iceman as well as the time-displaced adolescent version in a New York City attack, with the elder Bobby Drake affirming to his younger version that Pyro was, in fact, the actual Australian version resurrected. Pyro then joined a new mutant brotherhood led by Joseph, a man who was actually Magneto's clone, but who claimed to be Magneto. He fought the X-Men for a while, but when Joseph's identity was discovered, Pyro sought to defend him from his teammate, Juggernaut. Cyclops' blow knocked Pyro unconscious in an instant. Pyro subsequently goes to Krakoa and confesses that he was exploited as a lab rat and was among the first victims to be revived by the Five, and as a result, he loses all memory of what he did when Selene resurrected him. He has since been recruited into Kitty's Marauders team.
Darling, he's such a popular fella.
Pyro's appearances in X-Men the Animated Series. Pyro makes an appearance in quite a few episodes of X-Men, an animated series that debuted in 1992 on the 31st of October. He makes a notable appearance in the 9th episode of the first season titled The Cure, which aired on February 20th, 1993. He is initially seen with Avalanche at a Weird Island tavern, waiting for the shape-shifting Mystique. They assume Rogue is her, but she tosses them into a wall. Rogue pays a visit to Dr. Adler, a crazy scientist who has relocated to Muir Island to conduct research and discover a cure for mutant kind. She asks if she can test his remedy. Dr. Adler answers that he will think about her proposition. Shockingly enough, Dr. Adler is revealed to be Mystique after Rogue departs. While hunting for Avalanche on the seashore, Pyro encounters Cable, who is also searching for Dr. Adler. Avalanche saves Pyro from the ocean after Cable shoots him. Since Dr. Adler is in such great demand, Pyro and Avalanche determine that they should abduct him. Meanwhile, Rogue agrees to Dr. Adler's medication, but Pyro and Avalanche show up and abduct the doctor before he is able to finish. Rogue and Cable are hot on the heels of the two criminals. Pyro and Avalanche realize that they have actually kidnapped Mystique, a member of their squad. Meanwhile, Xavier examines the abduction scene, and Jean and Cyclops accompany him, claiming that Rogue came here to be treated by Dr. Adler. Rogue is then seen dealing with Pyro and Avalanche, while Cable is seen dealing with Dr. Adler. The 12th episode of the first season, titled Days of Future Past Part 2, aired on March 20th, 1993, and also featured Pyro as an antagonist along with a few other members of the Brotherhood of Mutants, including Blob, Avalanche, and Mystique. When Bishop flies back in time to thwart an important murder in Washington, D.C., Pyro and the Brotherhood of Mutants disrupt Senate hearings. Mutant kind was blamed for the catastrophe, according to him, and so the Mutant Control Law was enacted. Sentinels hunted for mutants and herded them into prison camps. Those in control of the Sentinels began to hunt out humans as well, seizing control of the White House. While the X-Men are fighting the criminals who are invading the Senate, their captain, the shapeshifter Mystique, tries to kill Senator Robert Kelly. His secretary informs the X-Men of the attempted assassination of the senator. Ultimately, Bishop's plan to change the past fails, and he returns to the future only to realize that his trip to the past was fruitless and changed nothing. This episode marks one of Pyro's most major story arcs as a villain. The episode is actually based on Uncanny X-Men Comics issue 142, in which the X-Men stopped the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants from killing Senator Kelly. The plot was changed to conform to the chronology of the cartoon series. Episode 9 of the second season of X-Men the Animated Series mostly centers around Rogue, but it also briefly features Pyro along with the rest of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. This episode was titled A Rogue's Tale, and it first aired on January 8th, 1994. Pyro is seen alongside the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants as they raid a farmer's market and summon the X-Men. The X-Men come and engage the Brotherhood in battle. When Cyclops, Wolverine, and Gambit arrive at a hospital where Miss Marvel is lying in a coma, he attacks them. He and the rest of the Brotherhood get close to defeating the three until Storm appears and swallows them up in a tornado. He also appears in Rogue's memories as she recalls her time in the Brotherhood and how the newly formed Brotherhood once tried to steal an aircraft but was stopped by Miss Marvel.
Girl, or are you just stupid?
Pyro's appearances in X-Men Evolution. Pyro also features in quite a few episodes of X-Men Evolution, an American cartoon TV series about the X-Men. The series ran from November 2000 to October 2003. Third season aired on November 9th, 2002, and was titled The Toad, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Pyro is first noticed by Wanda standing in the midst of flames and laughing atop a bridge that explodes. As Pyro appears on the bridge, his fire takes the form of 4 horses, presumably foreshadowing the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. She directs her beam at Pyro, who falls from the bridge, but pulls himself up by one of the bridge's cables. He leaps over Wanda and throws something to the floor, which Wanda retrieves. Pyro launches flames from the bridge railing at the oil tanker that Wanda is positioned next to. It explodes, sending Wanda flying. She braces herself on the bridge's edge with one hand, ultimately getting her second hand on the edge as well. The rods catch fire and begin to crack as a result of the heat. Without the stability of the rods on Wanda's side, the bridge begins to corkscrew and topple. Some vehicles end up in the river. An SUV collides with Wanda, forcing her to lose her grasp on one hand, which she quickly regains. The peak of the structure is entirely engulfed by fire and begins to collapse on the cars and pedestrians below. Cyclops shoots a chunk about to land on top of someone. Jean utilizes her abilities to prevent another piece from falling on someone else. Storm flying overhead prompts it to start pouring. Wanda climbs back upon the bridge. When they question why Pyro was chasing her, she explains he was carrying a warning from her father. He hopes she will halt her search for him and his errand guy, Pietro. The episode then pans to some snow-covered mountains. Wanda observes Pyro out in the distance skiing. Wanda exits a lift and begins to pursue Pyro. Pyro is skiing in the forest, with Wanda close behind. Wanda does not chase him when he leaps over a cliff. She observes Pyro as he approaches a massive metal sphere. When an opening emerges, Wanda exclaims, "Magneto!" as Pyro walks into the space, which closes behind him. A floating ball appears right in front of Wanda and blasts her with some type of gas. Wanda collapses and is carried away to the sphere. Then we see Wanda and Magneto. Magneto tells Wanda that he expects Pyro's clues to bring her to him, as she is tied into a chair. The 12th and 13th episodes of the 3rd season were both continuations of the title Dark Horse. They were aired on August 9th and August 16th, 2003, respectively. In the 12th episode, Rogue notices Pyro as she arrives at a warehouse along with Mystique. She steals Colossus's powers and begins to hunt down all the mutants within the warehouse. Pyro says that Rogue is stupid for being there and shoots flames at her, but Rogue uses Colossus's powers to swiftly defeat him. Rogue also eventually ends up stealing Pyro's powers. The 13th episode begins with a few mutants engaged in a fierce battle, Pyro being one of them. They are trapped within something that appears to be a tomb in the ground. Pyro finally finds himself alone in a room with Scott and Pietro when he lights the place up. Scott warns everyone not to move when they spot 2 figures, but Pietro accelerates away, bringing the statues to life. Scott and Pyro are now forced to battle them. Scott blows an arm off one of the sculptures, revealing that they are robots. Pyro is pushed over as Pietro rushes in to inform him that he has discovered an escape. Scott and the others are soon smashing through the wall, pursued by robots. The others leave as Bobby, Scott, and Pyro start to battle the statues once again. Bobby and Scott flee as Pietro drags Pyro along, saving him from a hit by a robot. Storm, Cyclops, and Pyro fight with the final surviving robot after a brutal struggle. Storm, Cyclops, Pyro, and Magneto work together to blow away one of the statue's legs. Cyclops is also able to destroy one of the statue's hands. Apocalypse and Pyro are shown employing their skills several times, but have no dialogue. In this episode, Quicksilver and Pyro appear to have become buddies. Pyro's appearance in X-Men movies. Pyro had a brief scene in the X-Men film, attempting to impress Rogue by placing his hand across his back and demonstrating his pyrokinetic talents by producing a small flame. However, Bobby Drake, who was sitting just beside Rogue, used his cryokinetic ability to freeze the flame over. Pyro then drops the icy fireball, which shatters on the ground and draws the focus of Storm and the rest of the class. Rogue, Bobby, Pyro, and another student at school are playing football after the X-Men stop Magneto. At the same time, a news story displays Senator Kelly, who is actually Mystique in a guise, revoking the mutant registration law. In the film X2 X-Men United, during a museum tour, Iceman, Pyro, and Rogue get into a fight with two other young guys in the food court. One of the guys takes John's Zippo lighter, which he uses to start a fire to burn a cigarette. As a result, John causes the flames to leap onto the boys' garments, igniting them. Bobby jumps in and effectively extinguishes the flames with his ice skills. The entire museum grinds to a halt as everyone gets frozen in the moment as if time had stopped, with just the mutants unharmed. Professor Xavier arrives unimpressed by the incident and warns Pyro about showing off, informing John that if he ever wants to show off, he shouldn't. When the Xavier Institute's professors and pupils learn of a mutant strike on the president in the White House, Cyclops thinks it's time to go, which Professor X agrees to before unfreezing everyone. When Mystique hacks through Stryker's computer, she finds Pyro's true identity, John Allardyce, among the mutants Stryker has been researching. When Stryker's troops attack the X-Mansion, Wolverine murders many of the pupils, while Colossus, Rogue, Iceman, Pyro, and the majority of the students escape through the underground tunnels. When Wolverine meets Stryker, who is unable to provide any light on Wolverine's background, Iceman assists Wolverine in fleeing, but Stryker's forces are successful in sedating 6 students. After escaping the school and being separated from the majority of the kids, Iceman, Pyro, Rogue, and Wolverine went to Bobby's house to relax and get their bearings. Negotiations with the police fail when they attack Iceman's previous residence, and one officer demands Logan to lower his weapons. When he withdraws them, he gets shot in his head, although the bullet fails to penetrate his adamantium cranium. After they hit Logan in the head, John retaliates by subduing the cops with his pyrokinetic powers while Wolverine was asleep. John nearly set fire to Bobby's house, forcing Rogue to use her abilities to stop him and put out the flames. As Wolverine heals, the X-Jet, piloted by Jean Grey and Storm, lands on the front yard, sparing the party the effort of escaping their situation. Once everyone gets aboard, the plane takes off, but is intercepted by 2 Air Force F-16 aircraft fighters. Later, while on the trip to Alkali Lake aboard the X-Jet, Pyro talks to Magneto, who asks for his true name, to which John answers Pyro, as he exhibits his pyrokinetic skills. Seeing John's power, Magneto informs him that John is truly a god living amid insects, and to not allow anybody to tell him otherwise, before handing Pyro back the Zippo lighter. Bobby, John, and Rogue were almost forced to stay on the X-Jet while everyone else proceeded into the facility. Later, when Iceman, Pyro, and Rogue have to wait for the X-Jet, Pyro grows impatient and decides to visit the Weapon X facility in order to assist the X-Men. Pyro asks Rogue if she usually does what she's been told to do before exiting the plane, when she tells him they were instructed to stay put. Pyro soon saw Magneto and pursued him to the chopper that both he and Raven discovered Stryker bound to. As they were flying off, Raven recognized him and permitted him to enter the chopper and go with them. In the film X-Men: The Last Stand, a crowd listens to an organizer as many are grumbling about the cure while visiting a church in which a big gathering of mutants has assembled to argue the treatment. Another mutant in the audience cries at the speaker that the government is planning to destroy them, but he says that the cure is optional and that no one is talking about extermination. Another speaker from behind joins him, noting that no one ever talks about it, they simply do it. Magneto walks to the front, followed by Pyro, and all the mutants turn to see. Magneto informs them that while they are organizing and forming committees, the annihilation has already begun. He argues that the government would draw first blood and impose the remedy on them. The only issue is whether the mutants would fight alongside Magneto's Brotherhood or wait for their final annihilation. Who will they support? Magneto walks outside after finishing his speech, with Pyro behind him. Magneto questions Callisto about what her powers are, and Callisto shows off her super speed by dashing around the building in milliseconds. She claims to have another skill. She knows that he has mastery over metal, and she also knows that there were 87 mutants in there, and that only 2 of them were Class 3, namely Magneto and Pyro. Magneto notices she can detect other mutants as well as their abilities, and asks if she can find one in particular for him. Pyro then joins Magneto and Callisto in their pursuit of Mystique. The convoy guarding Mystique's truck continues on its journey until the commander of one of the cars notices a figure standing on the street in front of him. It's Magneto, sporting his helmet. The vehicle flies to the other side of the road as the powerful mutant raises his hand. The next automobile is then blasted to the opposite side. With another sweep of his hand, the two automobiles behind the truck are likewise pushed to their side. Magneto rips the truck's rear from the driver, sending the driver's half soaring into the air and smashing behind him. The tail of the truck continues to slide towards Magneto until Magneto brings it to a complete stop in the final second. He smashes in the rear door, followed by Pyro and Callisto. Mystique had already managed to break out from her confinement by the time Pyro and Magneto entered. She informs her master that it's past time for them to release her, and he replies he's been preoccupied and wonders if she discovered what she was searching for. She explains to him that the origin of the treatment is a mutant, a boy at Worthington Labs at Alcatraz, and that they would be helpless without him. Magneto summons a sheet from the floor to Pyro's hands and instructs his young follower to read out the list of prisoners. Pyro proceeds to read from the list. James Madrox in cell 41205. As Pyro continues reading, Mystique warns them to be cautious of the next one, Kane Marco, solitary imprisonment. Magneto finds this interesting and rips up the cell door, seeing Kane abound in every area of his body. He asks Kane what they called him, and Kane says Juggernaut. Magneto then deploys his powers to stop a guard from attacking them, and Pyro kills the guard with a massive fire. Magneto and Pyro then return their attention to Mystique, who has been struck with a mutant cure dart. Magneto tells Pyro that it's a pity, she was so lovely, as the mutants exit the vehicle, leaving the wronged human Mystique behind and cruelly discarding her. When Magneto walks off after Jean Grey enters the Brotherhood of Mutants and he's done conversing with her, Callisto and Pyro accompany him. Pyro does not trust her since she is an X-Men, but Magneto replies by telling John that he was once one of them as well. Pyro disagrees, informing Magneto that he has remained with him the entire time and would have killed the professor personally if given the chance. On the other hand, Eric is enraged to hear this. He informs Pyro that Professor Xavier has done more for mutant kind than he could have ever known. Later, outside of the Worthington Lab complex, Iceman is strolling through the mutant mob, looking for his lover, Rogue, among the mutants lined up for the cure. John Allardyce, an old friend turned enemy, approaches him and asks whether he's come to receive the medicine so he can return to his mother and father. Bobby informs Pyro that he's searching for someone, and Pyro realizes he's hunting for his lover, since she'll want the treatment. Bobby becomes enraged after Pyro provokes him by telling him that his girlfriend is pitiful. John answers by forming a little flame in his hand and dares Iceman to react. On the other hand, Iceman does not want to spark anything and simply walks away. Ultimately, it is Iceman who defeats Pyro in the final battle. In X-Men Days of Future Past's Rogue Cut, after Xavier's party lands in China along with Bishop's party, Warpath pays respect to those who perished in the battle. Among these is Pyro's Zippo lighter, implying that Pyro lived through the Dark Phoenix happenings, but was killed during the Sentinel strikes. Alternate versions of Pyro. On the reality of Earth 295, St. John Allardyce is one of the hundreds of mutants imprisoned in the Apocalypse slave pens. After being tested upon by the Dark Beast, he obtained the capacity to make flames on his own, but only after burning himself. He attempted to flee the Bredom pens with a group of other mutants, only to be pursued by the elite mutant force. He was murdered by Havoc, and his body was sent to the Dark Beast to be torn down to its basic components and utilized to create new infinities. Pyro was one of the Alpha's corpses collected by McCoy and Sugarman in order to be resurrected and serve in Weapon Omega's army. On Earth 1610, Pyro originally appeared while battling the Friends of Humanity before encountering Nightcrawler. He was allied with the Morlocks and supported Xavier's cause. He informed Nightcrawler that he wished he could have been an X-Men member. Bishop and Storm subsequently save him from a Sentinel onslaught and enlist him as a participant in their new X-Men squad. Bishop stated that the recruits might become heroes in the future, implying that Pyro had a lot of potential. He cauterized a gunshot wound by placing flames on it at one point. Bishop later sent Pyro to penetrate the Mutant Liberation Front as a mole for his group. Strife, the gang's commander, identified Pyro as a spy, but admitted that there was nothing whatsoever to hide and wanted that he would commit to the gang sincerely. Pyro eventually left the X-Men for an unspecified cause and joined the Brotherhood of Mutant Supremacy. When Mastermind defeated Valkyrie of the Ultimates, Pyro looked eager to help Mastermind in assaulting her until Valkyrie awoke from her mind control and beheaded Mastermind while ripping Pyro's hands off. It is unclear whether he recovered from this injury. When on Earth 58163, reality. Pyro, along with Exodus, was a member of Australia's mutant supremacist government. In the subjugation of the human people, he collaborated closely with Vanisher. They drew the Hulk's notice when his buddies, a tribe of Aborigines, were tormented. Pyro retained his past as a writer and has a romantic side here. He momentarily fashioned a small pixie out of a match flame, telling the Vanisher that he once used to pen gothic tales and that he had more layers than a parfait. In the reality of Earth 2149, little is known about Pyro's past before the zombie epidemic. However, it is safe to assume that it was similar to his mainstream counterparts. Pyro can be seen in the distance along with a swarm of zombies attempting to capture the Blob. He is also seen battling with undead incarnations of the Freedom Force with the X-Men. Although his eventual fate is unclear, it is assumed that he was scorched once the power cosmic zombies experimented with their new abilities. In the Marvel Mangaverse, based upon Earth 2301, Pyro, a Dazzler strip club customer, and her companions Iceman and Avalanche were lured into the fight between the Hellfire Club and the X-Men when, while drinking, Pyro initiated a dispute about who was supposed to sponsor the round. Emma Frost used her telepathic abilities to provoke the debate into aggression as a type of test for the three. She directed them to assault the X-Men when she was satisfied with them. Pyro was lured into a fight with Storm when he confronted the X-Men in their home. Unfortunately, Pyro was at a tremendous disadvantage and was swiftly vanquished before being apprehended by the X-Men. When the local cops began gathering up mutants, the three attacked the X-Men's residence, exposing themselves and using the opportunity to target the officers and flee. As they made their way away, they were met by Jean Grey, who, using her Phoenix power, demolished the structure, killing the three. In the X-Men Misfits reality, Pyro attends the Xavier School. He is a Hellfire Club member and Kitty's ex-boyfriend. He is still the same mutant with fire control abilities. He has a snobby demeanor and considers mutants to be the better race. He enjoys causing mischief and is very protective of Kitty. Pyro is a hot-headed person who is usually nasty to everyone outside of the Hellfire Club. Instead of his regular name, he goes by Pyro. Pyro's appearances in other media. In Pride of the X-Men, Pyro embraced Magneto's Brotherhood to aid him in his plan to take over the world. Blob, Juggernaut, Toad, and White Queen accompanied him. Magneto devises a strategy after being freed from prison. Pyro and Blob were sent to the Deep Space Observatory to divert the X-Men as he and Juggernaut ambushed the Xavier Mansion to obtain the mutant power circuit. The X-Men leave with Kitty Pryde and Xavier left behind. Pyro and Blob kidnap the folks at the observatory. The X-Men travel to the observatory in the Blackbird as Pyro gathered tracking data for the Scorpio comet. Once the X-Men arrive, Colossus attempts but fails to defeat Blob. Pyro assaults the mutants, but Storm protects them with the wind. There is no trace of either criminal after the fires are extinguished. Magneto orders Toad within Asteroid M to load the circuit onto their computer before batting away a little dragon. Xavier then utilizes his abilities to figure out what Magneto is up to. Magneto has successfully built the mutant power circuit on Asteroid M and is directing the Scorpio comet onto Earth. It will exterminate the majority of humanity so that the mutants can reign. Magneto observes on a monitor while Cyclops smashes his way into the airlock. Magneto then dispatches the Brotherhood. When the X-Men come across Pyro, Dazzler chooses to face him herself, and the X-Men continue without her. Magneto collected his Brotherhood and fled before they were all annihilated after the comet was redirected onto the asteroid. In Wolverine and the X-Men, Pyro was initially seen as a Mutant Response Division detainee. Wolverine set him and the others free. He eventually became a member of Magneto's acolytes. In Genosha, Pyro and Sinyaka were dispatched to MRD Facility Beta located in the northwest to isolate a number of mutants. Polaris subsequently told Magneto that Pyro told her about Scarlet Witch's prolonged absence. Magneto put Pyro in Nightcrawler's unique cell as the other acolytes hunted for Nightcrawler and Scarlet Witch, telling Pyro that he had contributed enough. Pyro has also made appearances in several video games. Pyro features as a boss in X-Men the official game. In X-Men Legends, he is among the game's initial bosses. Later in the game, a dark variant of Pyro emerges as a boss adversary. In the game X-Men Next Dimension, only in the Xbox game's console version is Pyro a playable character. Pyro is a playable character in the PC edition of X-Men Legends 2: Rise of Apocalypse. marvelous verdict. In conclusion, Pyro, also known as John Allardyce, is a powerful and complex mutant from the X-Men series. His ability to control and manipulate fire has made him a formidable enemy for the X-Men and also made him a compelling character. Throughout the comics, Pyro has been a member of the Brotherhood of Mutants, but his loyalty and alliances have been tested over time. He is one of the most compelling characters in the X-Men universe, and his fiery powers and complex backstory make him a character worth exploring. Thank you for watching our video, and we hope you have a better understanding of Pyro and his place in the X-Men universe. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.